Hello, and welcome to our next presentation. On behalf of the MIT CDOIQ Virtual Symposium, we'd like to thank all of our sponsors who have continued to support the symposium during this very challenging year. Before we thank our partners, we'd like to ask that sometime during the symposium's breaks that you visit our partners' virtual booths. You can also visit the Content Hub on the MIT CDOIQ website for some great partner resources. We'd like to thank the following partners: Deloitte, Informatica, Privacy Analytics, SelfAwareness, Fusion Alliance, KPMG, Sandal Consultants, Tamer, Elation, Ali Data, Big ID, Boomi, Caserta, Citizen, Data Kitchen, Garage, Wakira, Pylog, Click, ThoughtSpot, Eckerson, Global IDs, Snowflake, Starburst. And as I said, please make every effort to visit our partners, use the virtual passport, because without them and our partner support, the symposium could not be held. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. This is now session 12D, and a topic that's quite near and dear to my heart, and hopefully to leadership, not just data leadership, throughout our organizations. As one state employee to another state employee, I'd like to welcome Kevin Jones to our event here and talk a little bit about what he's going to be looking at, which is in many ways a self-contained study. And that's interesting, of course, from an academic perspective, but also as we as data leaders are going forward, this represents the type of information that needs to be institutionalized in our organizations. So please pay attention not just to Kevin's information he's going to give us, which is marvelous, but he's also going to talk a little about the way in which he's trying to make sure that he's creating the culture, the situation, the processes and people part of the equations so that the organization that he's working with can continue to be successful into the future. Kevin, can I turn it over to you with that?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction, and I also am very appreciative of the opportunity to share our journey with this group and to hopefully give other individuals an idea of how you can apply some of your academic knowledge to the actual workforce, particularly public sector and private sector. I think public sector has been neglected in so many ways. And for me, this was an inviting opportunity to come and work for this organization who was in desperate need of someone to come and really listen and own their problems and help them with the challenges of transforming from a organization that was in disarray in the newspaper for the chaos to evidence and a process or driven organization that is now one of the envies to many states across the country with some of the things we're doing. And I'm super thankful for the opportunity to work for that organization and allow them to practice my discipline, what I've spent my years being trained to do. I am a classically trained computer electrical engineer. Purdue University was where my undergraduate studies were taken care of, and my graduate work was done at the Johns Hopkins University in complex systems engineering. Master's degree, started my doctoral studies. I'll complete that after I'm done helping the state transform. And I'm currently in the role for the state of Indiana, the Department of Child Services, as the Chief Information Officer. I have responsibilities for IT, innovation, transformation, end-to-end processes from data and analytics to all the way through system delivery. So let me share my screen so I can share with you our journey, and hopefully this gives you something, or you get something out of this that you can take on and apply yourself.
And Kevin, maybe while you're doing that, you can turn your camera on as well, because you've got a great presentation.
Sure. Are you able to see my screen, the presentation at this point?
Yep, we're good.
Everything looks great. And you're flashing in and out with that wonderful surprise. There he is, and there he isn't. Good to see you.
So if you do see my background, again, I'm staying true to my alma mater. Some of you guys may recognize the background. It is actually the Peabody Library at the Johns Hopkins University. So I'll start with my presentation, really focused on, this is going to show you, or at least hopefully it will give you an idea of how our journey to becoming a modernized organization in general, building enterprise performance management, becoming a process-driven and evidence-based driven organization, ended up moving us to a specific process that allowed me a quick win and leveraging virtual reality to reduce our staff turnover. And I have the use case numbers in the end, so I'll wait to the end to tell you what our numbers got to, and I did the new calculations of where we are today. And it's been truly an amazing transformation for us. So the Indiana Department of Child Services is organization, generally our federal governing bodies. We're under a group called the Administration for Children and Families. Our overall organization focuses on the practice, we call it's Title IV. So it is child welfare and child support. And basically, for the most part, I have responsibilities for our child welfare system, which is a case management system that supports over 5,000 users of that case management system. We have responsibility for all 92 counties and enforcing that across 6.7 million Hoosiers in the state of Indiana. And primarily, we focus on the roles or going to the home when there is a report of abuse or neglect, doing an assessment of that child and their safety, and making a determination on whether or not we should remove that child from the home, or do we work with the parents to keep the child in the home because there is an immediate safety that we've assessed and they're okay, but work to make sure that there's practices in parenting that is being applied that is appropriate to keep the child safe. The other part of our business model is the child support system, in which we collect $680 million a year in child support in the state of Indiana. We're currently ranked, I think, in the eighth position across all states. We manage both Title IV cases, where the cases in which paternity has to be established through courts, as well as private divorce cases or private paternity established cases. And if your employer or you're using a system, or you need a system to actually track and manage your child support for accountability for both sides, custodial parent and non-custodial parent, our system will process that for you. Our total head count currently is we have a total of probably about 5,000 individual employees. On the child support side, we have a cooperative agreement where we work with all 92 counties, and we have an additional 1,500 county prosecutors, clerks, and elected judges as well who enforce the child support enforcement. Our caseload and scope for both child support and child welfare, again, over $680 million collections in child support. Child welfare, we average about 250,000 investigations a year, and we currently have around 20 to 23,000 children in our care, in which we're managing their safety, either physically in our custody or managing that across between their parents and us as a facilitator. One of the things that I discovered in 2017 when I was asked to come over to the child support group and was the overall issue of being able to understand who we are. Initially when I arrived, I had just recently successfully implemented a Medicaid system for the state of Indiana. They asked me to move over and look at the child support and child welfare systems, which were in desperate need of replacement. When I arrived at this organization, they were in a situation where they were dramatically over a budget. The governor's office was asking them to reduce their spend to just over $1 billion to about $1.2 billion a year. And the primary issue was that they did not understand who they were. When we looked at the root cause, one of the primary issues in the root cause was their IT systems were segmented, the data and the divide across the socio-technical enterprise. The socio-technical enterprise being people from the socio, the technical being technology, and the enterprise is the overall process and the continuity of business to execute. That divide was massive in the sense that we had 4 or 5 systems that were built in a box. There was no real referential integrity, so there was no ability to really enforce data needs up across those systems. So there were external systems that were used to create primary keys, foreign keys to make some imaginary relationship for the data where there really was no relationship between that data. And one could imagine that if you had that type of bifurcation or trifurcation across all of our platforms, there's no way to truly understand the issues that your system, your organization face. One primary example was that we couldn't answer when a child comes to our care, they may go through 4 different statuses in our organization. We could never understand how much money we spent as that child progressed across status. We could only identify that that child had $5 million spent on it. So we were never able to really look at how can we improve different areas or different processes because we didn't understand what our scope really was or what the impacts were. I came in and I decided that I was going to, again, apply my academic knowledge to this and really start to focus on identifying evidence that would tell us who we were as an organization. You know, looking at our IT systems, we really focused in on the IT systems and we discovered that there was no real referential integrity just at the case management level. The systems were built because the business said we want this and they didn't engage IT and they were the strong point at that point and they were really focused on what we want. And from a social services organization, there was a lot of emotion in that, and that system was free. It was free to do whatever, which meant that the possibilities and the standard deviations that came from that was so vast, practically into the 3,800 power, being 3,800 different individuals who are entering that system could enter any combination of data how they chose. There was nothing that said this is a required field. There was nothing that said that you had to have this. And one of the things we identified was that there are that many variations. People look at our processes and they consume the processes, they consume the policies, and they executed their own method of child support and child welfare enforcement. And one of the things that we really started to realize is that we were never going to be able to manage that. And we use one example. We had over 1.5 million duplicate people records. That meant that you could be in the system 10 times and we wouldn't know who you were. And if someone couldn't figure out which one you were out of that, they just started a new case. So now you're in our system, time number 11. So it was a mess beyond messes. And I really wanted to focus in. And I started to, I realized that I had to do what is one of the toughest things that a CIO would have to do, which is help the organization understand who they were and who they were not. So I had to bring that situational and that self-awareness to the organization, starting with identifying the data, looking at what you think you were, what you can prove, what you can't prove, what we suspected. And we really identified in the prime areas where we thought we were sound, that we really didn't know anything about our business. And that was an awakening for the organization. One of the things we started to do to move past that was we began to build that self-awareness model to really start to understand, looking at the gaps analysis between this is what our vision, and who we are and where we don't. And where we don't, we need to start to capture that type of data. We need to start to work towards becoming a process-driven organization. And that requires us to marry people, process, and technology. You can't have one doing its own thing in the box or there's no awareness to an organization, particularly one who is heavily regulated by the government and may have tens of thousands of processes and tens of thousands of policies, and expect that FCM, who is trained to be a social worker, is going to know all 10,000 policies when they're out administering the outcomes and trying to get to positive outcomes for children. Our journey to start to build enterprise performance management really focused on how can we start to gather data, what do we know about who we are, how do we start to understand that, and start to build that marriage between people, process, and technology. We really started to look at how and where can we start to build business intelligence, knowing that overall at some point we were going to have to replace our system. And it was easy. Everyone would say, when we replace the system, this will happen. But that may or may not come. And one of the challenges I was dealing with was the politics in any state government or any government. If you work in a government agency, going to someone and saying, hey, I need X millions of dollars to replace this case management system for a social services organization, and I'm in a Republican state. Wow, that's like, are you crazy? Get out of here. So, and one of the things I had to do was to start to build a business case. I had to start to capture the data. I had to start to build and put this information together that you're seeing here today for a couple of reasons. One, to make sure that every step I'm capturing what, when, where, why, and how we did it. So I can explain it to politicians, attorneys, and accountants on one side, and then turn around and explain it to social workers and attorneys on another side. And then for my team, be able to explain it to engineers and one day a replacement CIO or whoever's going to maintain the continuity business after I'm gone, so that everyone is on the same place, same page, and they understand enough to know what they need to know in order to govern themselves accordingly. So focusing in on the enterprise performance management, building that business intelligence, and then getting to data and analytics so we can start to be more predictive, or at least and do analysis to understand what we should expect if we make certain decisions. Those are the types of steps we had to get to. And we started to do that, and we really had to focus in on one area. Really, where can we start to develop an area of maturity in our data? What is a pressing issue that I can see end to end? And I struggled. I just in on where can I find something end to end that is in a small enough scope that would allow me to build a proof of concept, one, but something that is actually going to be used to help us transform. And one thing stood out to us and started to repeat itself, which was staff turnover. In our organization, staff turnover was a tremendous cost, and no quickly we realized that staff turnover was costing us close to $72 million per year. $72 million per year. Each one of our individuals cost us $60,000 to train. We don't see a return on that investment until after their second year of service. And we were losing over 50% of our people in the first 2 years of service. And that was a tremendous number. We were hiring 1,500 people per year. I had 100 people that I was buying new laptops, new cell phones, or regurgitating laptops and cell phones to every single month. That cycle continued. And no one stopped to say, how much does this cost? And once we really did the analysis, I said, hey, look, this is a perfect use case. I need to do this. The problem for us was no one understood why people were leaving. And that lack of understanding put us in a situation where we had to stop everything we were doing and say, okay, let's find out why are the people leaving and understand. Most people would give me the emotional response of, I feel that people are leaving with this, or my gut tells me that they're leaving because of this. And in most cases, it led to salary. We don't pay them enough. And I wanted to focus in on evidence-based decisions and evidence that tells us exactly why. So the next thing we did was we went to and we built in our Salesforce platform a survey model for leaving. We focused in on about 25 main questions that would allow us to look at the things that I would suspect. I've worked in organizations and self-aware organizations where we generally leave people because of people. And one of the things we needed to understand was what are the other reasons and what can we do and how can we find evidence that will allow us to say, how can we correct behavior in our leadership all the way down? And one of the things we really wanted to do was find how and what that is so we can do two things. We wanted to correct behavior, but two, we wanted to start to be able to see where can we focus in on continuous improvement and start to build a more improving, a richly improving organization, getting to that lean and that process and that data-driven organization. And we leveraged Salesforce and we built it so that we also leveraged the iPhone platform, which every one of our case managers got an iPhone. So what we did was we automated it so that the day that you put in your 2-week notice, our HR, we have a full integration from MuleSoft to Salesforce to that. And as soon as they put it in, they were sent a email and a text message to fill out the survey. After 2 days of no response, they got another email. After 4 days, their supervisor and they received an email. And after the 6th day, it went all the way up to the director for that particular group that, hey, we need this survey filled out. It quickly got to the point where we no longer really had to get to the director. Those supervisors knew, oh man, you need to fill out your survey. And we were able to achieve a 95% plus or minus 3% return on all our surveys. And so it really gave me some scientific evidence of why are people leaving? What can we start to expect? Where can I give self-awareness information to my teams, my leadership, and their support, and so that we can start to correct our behaviors and become a better organization that is really supportive of our staff development and their experience when they work with our organization. One of the reasons this stood out to us was salary wasn't the primary reason people were leaving. In fact, salary wasn't even the top 10 reason. Most of the reasons that stood out were the ones that I expected. People leave people. 80-90% of the people who were leaving were saying primary reasons or secondary and some primary reasons were that their supervisor didn't support them. Their supervisor was biased against them. Their supervisor was unfair or didn't follow policy. All of those types of things we could correct in many different ways. But the time and the challenge of me correcting 4,000 people and bringing them to a self-awareness state so we could start using that was never going to happen, not in the time frame that I had. The second reason that really stood out to me, or sub reason, was over 50% of our people were leaving primarily because their job responsibilities didn't match what they expected them to match. We started to look at where can we correct that and what can we do? And our director said to me, well, why don't we send people out into the field before we can? Now, federal law will not allow us to do that. But I told her, I said, me being a classically trained systems engineer, we use something called simulations. How about I bring a VR, virtual reality, that will simulate the experience of going out to the field, going out and experiencing to go into the home, to do an assessment, make a determination on whether you're going to bring that child out of the home. And then how about I turn around and do a supplemental experience on sending that person back into that home and negotiating a safety plan and keeping the child in the home, or a safety plan to get that child out of our care and back into their home. And when we initially came through that idea, my next step was, now where am I going to build this? So we went on the process. I did twofold. My team and I started looking at building a VR model. But I was fortunate enough to go to one of our trade shows and run into Accenture, and Accenture mentioned that, hey, we have this product that we're putting out for training, and it's using virtual reality. And I was like, okay, so what are you doing? And I said, because I'm actually building that myself. And I said, well, we're building out this simulation for training. And I'm like, I'm not going to use that for training. They had the simulation already built, the exact one that we were planning on using. I said, this is what I'm going to use it for. They're like, we never thought you could do that. And I was like, well, I'm going to do that. And once we brought it in, we took that simulation, we took the virtual reality, and it was a perfect simulation. We did a demo for our leadership, for a couple of our field staff, and we took it across the street to the governor's office. And when they saw it, they said, buy that now. They immediately knew that this was a product that was going to be transformative. They didn't know how, but they trusted that I was going to apply this in a way that it was going to change the path and the trajectory of our organization. One of the things we looked at was threefold. We looked at three things that I knew that I could do, and not necessarily wait for my training staff to get on board. When you're dealing with teachers in adult learning, sometimes it takes them time to adopt VR, which this has been sitting on the shelf for a while because they weren't quite there. So I decided I'm going to take three paths that I can control myself. One was human resources, focus on all candidates that if we were going to provide them an offer, we will put them through the virtual reality simulation prior to providing them an offer. If at that point you feel that this person is still a great candidate after you, as the hiring manager, have witnessed them go through the simulation and their determination on to remove the child and home, and they've given you the justification as to why they made those decisions, if you feel this person is a good candidate, then extend them an offer. The second opportunity for that particular group was that it gave our potential candidates the opportunity to go through that simulation. And after you've experienced the emotion of being in there with live actors, seeing a mom who is high on drugs and a boyfriend who is drunk and a baby with a bruise visible from her wrist to her forearm after hearing a phone call from the biological father stating that mom is always in trouble and this man is beating my child. If you can't escape those emotions, if you can decide to leave her in the home or remove her from the home and justify your decision, and you at the end think that you want to do that for the rest of your career with DCS, then you decide to continue down the path of hiring. And that for us was the perfect opportunity to kind of stop bad data, bad information, bad entities coming into, or misfits for the particular roles for both them and for us coming into the door to begin with. The second group was our new cohorts, primarily giving these individuals simulation hours after simulation hours. Again, I'm used to using simulations to understand what my risks are, and risk management being the two primary keys of reduction of loss of property and reduction of loss of life. Dealing with the reduction and mitigating the prevention of loss of life in child welfare is our primary responsibility. And most organizations use simulations when you're trying to simulate a situation that would prevent the death of a human being. So why not use VR to run simulations, hours on top of hours, and require a new trainee to go through multiple 100 hours of this simulation prior to even going out into the field while they're being shadowed and while they're being trained in our field groups. So that group was a primary use case for us and wanted to provide that. And the third one that I was able to control was really twofold. One, the seasoned employees that average over 10 years of experience in our organization. There are two things I wanted to capture with those groups. One, I wanted to use them to build a baseline, an analytical analysis on how can I capture this information and build a baseline of an individual who, when we do our interviewing process and we capture their score and the metadata from these simulations, they fit the profile of an individual who will be here for 5 to 10 years. That focusing on being able to reduce my staff, my staff turnover by identifying individuals who have the ability and potential to be here long enough for that. So I wanted to capture that metadata. And then secondarily, I wanted to directly impact the solutions and the positive outcomes to children by giving these individuals experiences where we can identify that self-awareness data of I've developed biases, or I have practices, or my methods of engagement are not as effective as I thought they would be or thought they should be, and then have a peer view them and have their peer give them feedback and have someone supervise you after 10 years to help you see and give you self-awareness for yourself. So it was an amazing opportunity for a small investment to make a huge impact in our organization. The primary challenge that I faced was, now that I have this VR developed in a box, I need to capture the metadata. I need to pull all of the log files and the experience files out of that. Initially, Accenture didn't have that, and they were kind of like, that's magic, you're not gonna be able to get that. And I said, okay, well, I have a team, and me, you guys, wait and see. One of the things we did was we took that virtual reality headset, and they were built on an Oculus. And me and one of my systems engineers, my director of systems engineering, who's been with me for almost 8 years now, we took one home and we said, okay, let's see who can get the log file first. So Saturday morning, we were sitting at home, and I texted him and said, I got the log file. He said, hey, I already got it. I already got it loaded on the computer. So we're looking at this log. A API, pull this off and import it into our case management system. What you're seeing here is how we look at it from a VRR. What I mean by that is virtual reality as a service. And that virtual reality as a service for us is providing the data we need so that we can take the engagement for each candidate who goes through that system. Everyone who is going through that is able to see we can see their data, we can see how long it took them to answer questions, we can see what questions they chose, and each question and each answer has a score. So once we were able to capture that information from each of those entities, we could do two things. We can, one, then look at and overlay a candidate with their information over someone who's been here for 5 to 10 years. The second thing we were able to do is to start building employee sentiment. We built additional surveys that allow us to be able to capture information about our teams. We started focusing on the overall staff development and the investment in the people. So as we started to look at that data, as we pulled that data off of the virtual reality, we put it in and overlay it over their cases. So I can then start to see the types of, as we send them through simulation on simulation after year, every 6 months or every quarter, we can look and see the patterns where they did what they did in the simulation. How could that pattern, or where does that pattern affect the case, the decisions that were made on the case? Now, we're starting and building that model. We know it's going to take time to get to a point where it's predictive, but at least starts to give us a path to identify individuals in certain counties do the same thing because they were trained a certain way. Individuals in certain areas do certain things a way, or people who've been here for a certain period of time do things a certain way because they're trained that way. Don't have the predictive model yet, but it did allow me to change how I build my case management system that is in process right now to be able to force patterns, force behaviors, and also build a predictive case management plan that will allow 30-year employees to provide the same information to a person who's been here for 30 days and essentially transition that 30 years of effectiveness and efficiency to a person who's been here for 30 days, increasing the outcomes that we're going to get positively and ensuring a more of a standard process that still allows humans to deviate based on the circumstances that impact another human that is unique in its own way. So we're able to provide that important information that gets them to be more efficient and more effective. For us, taking the VR platform to be able to take that business intelligence and then marry that data from their experiences, the additional surveys we built at 30, 60, and 90 days of employment also gives us additional information that allows us to take that business intelligence and marry it with their simulations. And then we do 1 year, and every year, an individual employee gives us back that feedback. And we're able to now build an employee sentiment model that we can then match not just the VR simulations as they do them every quarter, but also we get to match their sentiment to say, hey, this person's feedback was negative about their supervisor. How did that feedback and how did that period of time person's ability to manage cases for children? One of the things we've been able to provide that type of feedback to our groups, and they're able to see, wow, I brought a personal issue into it. It impacted how I dealt with this bio dad or how I dealt with this custodial mom, which may have impacted this child. People come to me and say, Kevin, I feel like I've negatively impacted kids for the last 10 years. And this information, this data is allowing me to wake up and understand I've been doing things in a way that I've probably hurt children. And one of the things I try to tell them, look, you're in awakening, we relax. knowing what you know now, do things different moving forward. You can't go back and change the past, but that awareness allows you to understand what you can do forward. Being able to take this and put it in data, put it on a dashboard, put all this information on a dashboard and let them look at the trends and see how the data has impacted them. See how from the beginning, when I was a recruit, to the point where I was in the office being reprimanded because of an HR issue, how it went to, and I didn't get this from my training, or it impacted my performance. And the negative performance may even led to how or why my supervisor treated me a certain way, and brings self-awareness to us as individuals as well as us as an organization. It has been tremendous in being able to bring that out of just their ability to perform, put that performance in a box. We also record some individuals so they can see their own performance and give them a chance to really look at, when I'm in this situation, in the heat of the moment, when I'm experiencing the emotions of the situation, how am I responding effectively or ineffectively? One of the things we also notice as well is the tremendous reception we've seen from our millennials. I currently have a staff that stratifies across baby boomers all the way down to kids that are my kids' age and in their 20s. And that gap can sometimes create its own challenges. You don't want to change your system and your infrastructure and your architecture so much that you lose the wisdom of the individual who's been here for 30 years. And then you also don't want to cater to old ways of thinking to where the new generation of individuals who are coming in and can relate to some of the younger parents that we're going into the home and who are subject to some of our decisions. You want to get that mix so you can see that relatability. Also, one of the things you have to also remember too is the types of people that you're bringing in. Being able to program out biases, because we also run simulations to help individuals understand the implicit biases they develop and some of the racial disparity that we do witness in child welfare. So they get those simulations just for those particular interactions, and it allows them to see that I've grown up, raised in a privileged environment, but I'm coming to a home and the home is dirty. That's not child neglect or abuse in itself. Just being able to help understand and how to get them to understand how to apply empathy for the situation. Some of those things were super invaluable and have been a tremendous help in leveraging VR, or at least running simulations in augmented reality with our individuals, and letting our more seasoned individuals see and help with training for our younger individuals, and teaming those individuals together so that you get some of that knowledge infusion downstream and upstream. Knowledge infusion from wisdom and years of practice, knowledge infusion from a younger generation that you're now, as a seasoned veteran, working with and judging and or interacting with, and learning how to interact with that group as you go into their homes. For us, using VR to support this end-to-end process of building BI and then marrying and maturing that BI into a point where you can have business analytics that we can actually start to look at and analyze organizations and get to predictive analytics, and even more importantly, enterprise performance management, so that we can start to build continuous improvement, has been a tremendous tool. This particular process was one that was super successful, and it gave our entire organization the ability to see, wow, let's use data. Let's stop talking about I think, let's stop talking about how I feel. This showed us exactly what we need to do. And we saw the reduction in our staff turnover. This is what we need to start doing, to the point where our organization now is fully practicing lean transformation. This week, we're in the middle of Lean Week. We have 4 VSAs going on right now, multiple IEs happening right now, with over 600 people in our organization stopping what they're doing to just do one of 12 value streams and one of many RIEs within those value streams. It has been a tremendous transformation, and showing what data can do and how it can transform them, and the value that they've seen out of it as we continue to provide them dashboards and analytics with all of this data married together, and they're able to make better decisions. It's been a tremendous, tremendous advancement in our organization, and it's helped us optimize the results and even our evidence to a point where we've tried to build data because our system does not have the ability to create relationships, and people are starting to get anxious about when can I see this, when can I see this, and really fueling our transformation as a whole. Like I said, in March of 2021, we expect to launch our first phase, or at least release our first phase of our case management system being replaced. And that will put our primary case management system into the point where all of our data we've been capturing on VR, all of our data on employee sentiment, all of our case management data is all in one place, all on the same platform, purpose built for the intention of building an enterprise performance management model that is evidence-based for an organization focused on child welfare. Our case study. This comes to our evidence and our case information, and probably what you guys have been wanting to see. Focused on I have both the primary use and then some of the secondary uses that I mentioned in the conversation. So focus on using our virtual reality for the purpose of HR reducing staff turnover. We put in that use case where we wanted to send everyone through the interview process who is going to get an offer, and going from 120 people coming in every month down to a better number. We started to look at what we were doing. We targeted not the entire state, but we targeted our highest turnover, or 2 counties with the highest turnover. And this is we don't have a full year of being across the entire state, but this is focused on our pilot. We were able to, during that period, we put 119 individuals through the HR simulation. As we eliminated a significant amount, and we said, hey, we're only going to offer 59 of you an offer. 59 accepted. Historically, we would have hired all 119 people, and all those people who we eliminated, and all those people who eliminated us, they would have been a part of the story of staff turnover.
Kevin, sorry to interrupt. We're losing your audio. Maybe you can turn off your camera for the meantime.
Sure. Okay. I assume it's okay. So there was 59 people, or those 13 people that accepted. We went back, and 26 of those individuals are still employed with us in the first year. That is a reduction from 53% to 19% total across our state. And initially, when we put this in, we witnessed a 18% reduction from that 53%. And I will tell you, I won't take credit across the entire state because these numbers were limited. So prior to COVID impacts, these are not COVID impacted numbers for this particular group, but across our entire agency right now, we're starting to witness about a 19%, we're running 19% staff turnover from 50% over 18 months ago. So that has been a tremendous turnaround for us, and it's one that we're super excited about. And VR has contributed tremendous to that. We've also used the other data that we found to proactively work. We've replaced supervisors, we've replaced regional managers, we've replaced people and moved people around to places where they should be better supported. And in those areas, we witnessed a drop in staff turnover. So we've used our enterprise performance management data to reduce our staff turnover. VR was super focused, and it's been a tremendous asset. I do want to share with you the other groups that we put through the VR simulation. This is some of the responses that we received from the HR feedback. These are individuals who may or may not have gotten the offer, but or may or may not accepted our offer. But we allowed, and we wanted to get information from individuals good and bad on experience, and everyone was clear about, for the most part, they were clear that this helped me make a decision on whether I should or shouldn't work for this organization. Some people got confirmation that they wanted to do it. Some people I'm sure that I don't want to work here. The other use cases we talked about was our additional cohorts. One of the things we focused on was making sure that those individuals were able to get an opportunity to go pull hours of simulation. We got multiple sessions, and we were able to get
Kevin, this is Peter. Can you hear me? We seem to have lost your audio. I'm wondering if, since we do have 15 minutes left, if you could jump out and jump back in, try and reestablish the connection. I think everybody's gotten most of what you've been describing here, but I want to make sure that they hear you, because we went from a super dynamic presentation to one that was constrained by technologies, and that's not going to work real good. So just real quick, jump out, jump back in if you can. We'll keep a watch on here, and this is where I would take time for some music, Tom. Oh, I know. I could read. This would be the most awful thing I could do to Kevin. I will read his slide here. Kevin, of course, has given us just the opposite of a boring talk on this. So if I sit here and say this, the response is here. I'm trying to be silly as far as that goes, but hopefully he'll be back on in just a second or two. Again, I want to just emphasize that, first of all, we're really thankful for a presentation of this, because this is seriously actionable stuff, way, way beyond our data community. Although if the data community starts to practice it, we might be able to set an example for everybody else. Kevin, I can see your mouse. That's good. Maybe unmute your mic and try, see if it came back. Maybe. But again, I'm just thrilled with the content here, because it is a super example, of course, of using data. As I said, I hope he gets into the other part of this, which is how he's going to make sure the organization is able to use this going forward. Kevin, can you hear us? You're sort of seeing your microphone muted. Demanding cat, isn't he? Hold on with this, guys. We should be just over this technical glitch in a minute.
So with the case study, the responses for the HR group, as you can see, there were so many people who actually, we gave them all opportunity to respond, but there were so many people that couldn't really believe how realistic the emotions they felt, how realistic the scenario was, and how it simulated the actual day-to-day work that they would do. Primarily 70% of the work would be this, the other 30% would be the second scenario. But primarily, many of the individuals got an opportunity to really see what the day in the life was of this role. And the 50% that decided that we decided shouldn't do this versus the 50% that decided that they were not going to choose to do this, truly got an opportunity to say, hey, this is what I wanted. This is what I want to do. I think this is where I need to be. And the other ones got an opportunity to say, hey, I was 100% sure this is what I was going to do. I know now that this is absolutely not what I expected. There's no way I'm going to do this. So it was a tremendous opportunity for them to see. The other two groups that I shared with you, I really wanted to share these because I think it was important, because our sub-additional groups for the VR study, we wanted to really look at our cohorts. You know, we put them through hundreds and hundreds of hours of simulation, just like you would as an airline pilot. We wanted to put them through simulation so they were better prepared, and they didn't go out and cause themselves harm, as well as a family. And really leveraging the ability to look at the improvement of our training. So not just letting them go out, but letting us get an opportunity to see when they came from training, now they're in our field. We're putting them through shadowing before they go to the field. We're also putting them through simulations And we get a chance to see where is our training effective, where is it not effective, or as effective as it should be. And we were able to look at where we can improve the gaps in some of the training issues, and also look at what was the feedback. Did they get a better, and many of them reported that they were able to engage families better. They were able to look at and interpret behavior that they weren't able to do in the past. So and this was done scientifically. So we actually gave them scenarios and surveys, gave them surveys before they took the scenarios, and then we gave them surveys after. So we could actually measure where they improved. So they took an exam or a test, and what they answered before versus what they answered after, similar but not exactly the same test, but it measures the same. We were able to get an improved response, and this is the measurements for that. So you can see where their family engagement improved, and some of the choices they would have made were a little bit different. And if you can see their response, so many members of that group were able to go out and become this. It says seasoned employees, but this is actually our cohort. Sorry about that. But so many people in this FCM group were able to go out and make better decisions, or at least feel better prepared for the work that they were going to have to do. They were able to take those scenarios and recall scenarios. And one of the feedback I've gotten from that group was that, I can never forget the faces of those people. The value in VR and having that full immersion experience, the opportunity to really feel that scenario and remember the people as if they were a case that they had experienced themselves. With our seasoned group, we focused on bringing that self-awareness to those groups, help them identify biases that they've developed over 10 plus years of practice, and then helping our managers understand the strengths and weaknesses of their employees and help them coach them in a way that will make them more effective than they already are. One of the things that really stood out to us is that the 55%, even in a 10-year seasoned employee, 55% and 69%, 59% felt that they were given techniques that would help them engage families better. And even more, the being able to identify and interpret behavior at 69% improvement. We were able to help identify where children were being removed from the home in situations where they shouldn't have, more frequently than they should have, because individuals were asking questions in a way that triggered emotional responses that were negative. We were able to identify negative emotional responses. They go through the simulation, and it tells you, and you can tell by the emotion that you asked a question that's going to trigger. And we identified case managers who ask questions in an aggressive tone when you're going into a home with individuals that you're going to tell them someone that they don't know, that you're going to take their child from them, or you're judging whether they have the right to keep their child. That's a negative experience, and it's charged with negative emotion. And if you're triggering those negative emotions, then you could be triggering a removal that would not have happened prior to you or in the way you've engaged. These are some of the responses we got from our seasoned veterans who, some of the things that really stood out to us was the first one, like it opened my eyes to new ways of investigating, being able to understand some of the things and some of the questions and the way I ask questions and how I could better improve my engagement with families, really helped them see the things that they've done in the past and where they could improve. And be water is a Bruce Lee quote, one of my favorite quotes that really helps me in this scenario. One, whatever the solution, whatever you're being asked, whatever the solution is, just take the form of that solution, whatever the need is. In this case, the need was we need to understand data better, all the way down to we need to use VR to be able to engage. Being able to provide solutions to your organization, being flexible enough to listen to what the needs are and let the data, let the information say where you go. I think I'm preaching to the choir, but for the most part, I think those are the paths that we should take. It's definitely a path I've taken here, and the opportunity led to us using VR and being able to improve our outcomes. So hopefully you heard me that time.
Absolutely. And again, sorry to make you go through it twice, but I felt it was important because you do have such an important story here. And also, I want to apologize for the technical glitch here because your passion made your presentation more interesting than the standard talking head piece on that. So I hope everybody was able to come away as impressed as I was with everything in there. Unfortunately, we have to stop right now because the next session, instead of being a half hour away, is 5 minutes away. So Kevin, thank you so much for doing this, and thank you for sharing your information. I think we're archiving the questions so we can get them to you, and look forward to being in contact in the near future. Thank you again for taking your time and sharing your insights here.